There are some advantages to using tried and true methods. And believe it or not, with the new software, I did try to, I did a few test lives, if you would, and everything was fine. So anyways, look at my new background. As all of you, I would hope, know or realize, I have a green screen. And so I'm using a new background today, and it's a picture painted by my good friend, Mr. Bruce Outridge, who of course is in the trucking industry. And Bruce loves trucks, is a truck driver, is a consultant to trucking, as well as many other things to do with trucking. A lot of video stuff he does for different trucking companies, and is greatly involved in the Hamilton Transportation Club. Hamilton Fleet, what do you call that? Fleet Safety? Anyways, he's greatly involved in that. If you ever need Bruce, reach out to me, and he would be happy to help you, I'm sure. But Bruce, that's a great picture in the background. What are we talking about this week? I want to answer, what's the purpose of doing these lives every Monday at 1 o'clock? Every Monday at 1 o'clock, I'm going live. That's my commitment to you. And if you're wondering why I'm looking over here, of course, I've got two screens and stuff's happening over there that I want to keep track of. Every Monday at 1 o'clock, I want to go live and answer your questions. Last week, as I said, we went live, and it was a disaster, but I had some questions that I wanted to get to last week, and this one came in via LinkedIn. If you would like to reach out to me, the best way to reach me is through email, chris@safetydawg.com. That's the best way. Or, while I'm live, I'd love to see you come on live and ask me some questions in the chat. So, be that as it may, this is something new, these lives. As I said last week, I've moved from Facebook to YouTube because I think YouTube is a better platform for this particular venue of live video. So through LinkedIn, I did get a question. They were reading an article, and yes, I have notes. So they were reading an article in, and I don't know where they were reading it, they didn't say, but about personal conveyance. And they wanted to ask me a question. Can a driver use a PC in between off-duty or sleeper berth time of 8 or 10 hours in Canada or not, if the driver is bobtailing? So they said if the driver is bobtailing, and of course I believe, with not enough information on that question, I believe the answer is yes. However, when I reached out to the person and asked a little more detail, it turned out that they had a trailer. And of course, no trailers are allowed in Canada if you're using PC. So personal conveyance in Canada, or personal use as we call it in Canada, you are not allowed a trailer. You can bobtail, and you can be off duty and bobtail, that's fine, but you are not allowed to have a trailer. In the States, different story. Different story in the States. They call it personal conveyance, and in the States, you can have a trailer. You can even have a load in the States. So it's quite different and remarkable in the States. Very open to driver abuse in the States. So do be aware of that. Can you use personal conveyance in the States, legally use it in the States, and then come across the border into Canada? And is that all legal? Well, I've got a couple of video links down below, and I don't believe it is. As a matter of fact, there have been tickets written to Canadians who have used legally personal conveyance while in the States, and when they come across the border, they receive a ticket because on our side of the border, they're looking at it, and basically they're saying that you interrupted your 10 hours of off duty. So we don't want you to be interrupting your 10 hours of off duty. That's really important. So be aware of that. Basically what happens, what I'm referring to, and again, watch the videos down below. they say it better, but you know, just imagine that you're 7 hours in your bunk and all of a sudden you get a knock on the door and you've got to move your truck, and sorry, you're in the States, 7 hours in the bunk, you've got to move your truck. So you're on a shipper's property, let's say. You drive 15 minutes down the road to a local truck stop, and so there you mark that as PC, which is off duty. So you're 7 hours in the bunk, you've now got 7 hours and 15 minutes, and you hop back into your bunk to complete your 10 for 2 hours and 45 minutes. When you come across the border, what happens is they look at it and they say you didn't have a complete 10. You didn't have 8, you only had 7 hours. And then you drove, you interrupted your 10 hours off duty, and now even if you declared sleeper berth on both sides, you don't have enough. You only have 2 3/4 hours. Adding on to that 7, you are now 15 minutes short for 10 for a Canadian rule. Again, if I said that confusingly, please watch the video down below, and that hopefully will answer your questions. And if it doesn't, reach out. All right, so there's a couple of videos down below. Changes to the hours of service in the States. There are changes coming to the hours of service in the States, and I see today in the headlines that the first hurdle has been crossed. So what happened was the FMCSA released the new rules, and the new rules may or may not be of benefit to truck drivers. My concern when I say it may not be of benefit, they are altering the sleeper berth. It's an absolute positive that they've done part of the new rule. So they've gone 8 and 2 in the sleeper berth, or 7 and 3 in the sleeper berth. Great. What is positive here is that neither part will count in as part of your 14. Currently, the way the law is written in the States, the 2 hours is part of your 14, only the 8 stops the clock. Well, under the new rules, both will stop the clock. Huge, really good, and I applaud them for making that change, I think. Here's my concern. Dispatchers. If you get stuck as a driver, if you get stuck in a loading door and you're stuck there for 3 hours, and the dispatcher says to you, well, you're still going to make your delivery on time, right? I mean, this happens every day, and you say, no, I just lost 3 hours. Oh, put it down as bunk time. You can split 7 and 3 now. Well, that's 3 hours that you're not getting paid for as a driver. And so this is where I'm saying, is it of benefit or not? If companies abuse drivers as they have in the past, then it's not a benefit, obviously. So there's a link down below about that. When they released them, they said in 120 days they will become in effect. 120 days from the time that they released them was September the 28th. And now they've been tied to a bill in the States. That bill hasn't become law yet. And so I'm of the opinion that you will not see these changes this year at all. So if you're counting on them, seeing changes, I don't think you're going to see changes this year at all, unfortunately. And again, a couple of videos down below, I put the links there. What are the changes and personal conveyance? I did have another question. Somebody asked me this question about adverse driving conditions. And I hope the question was related to Canada. I didn't get, it came through, I forget how it came through, but I didn't ask them if they were talking about Canada or the States. Anyways, I put a link to the Canadian laws down below for adverse driving conditions, but I want you to understand this. Adverse driving conditions means, and this is right from the Transport Canada, adverse driving conditions means snow, sleet, fog, or other adverse weather or road conditions that were not known, the emphasis is mine, but not known to the driver or the motor carrier dispatching a driver immediately before the driver began driving, or could not have been reasonably known to them. So what does all that mean? Well, not reasonably known to them means that slowdowns for traffic jams in Chicago, New York City, LA, or Toronto, you reasonably should expect traffic jams in Toronto. So That is one thing. So you can't use this adverse driving condition because of traffic jams. Weather that were not known to you. And as things get better and better in the weather department, yes, I know weather forecasters get paid to be right 50% of the time. I've heard that many times. But if the storm was forecasted, you can't use weather either. However, the one thing that you certainly can use is an accident that happens sometime after you were dispatched, after you had started driving, and you now get tied up for several hours in a traffic jam because of an accident that you didn't know about. That's legit. Now you can use the adverse driving condition, which of course is an extra 2 hours. So hopefully that clears that up. Adverse driving conditions, basically it's accidents only that you can use that for. Normal traffic jams you cannot, and it has to be unforeseen. All right, if you've got a question, put it into the chat for me or email me, chris@safetydawg.com. Another question, and this was directed to me, and it should have been to your insurance broker. Not at fault accidents. Not at fault accidents. Here's the question. Hope all is well. Question for you. I have a not a fault accident in Ontario. Am I responsible to pay the deductible? Well, with my years of understand that I'm speaking from a company insurance point of view. You know that I worked at Old Republic for almost 15 years. So I'm speaking from their point of view. And what happens at many of the insurance companies, until it is clearly determined that you are not at fault, they will ask you to pay the deductible. And they may give it back to you later, but they will usually ask you to pay the deductible until the claim is settled, and then they'll refund the deductible. Of course, is that fair? That's a great question. Is it fair? Unless it's absolutely clearly not your fault. And the only one that I can say is pretty much clear is a rear ender where somebody else rear ends you. If the accident was something like, hey, I was going through a green light and I got hit, well, you're saying you're going through a green light. What's the other driver saying? So that one isn't so clear. A rear ender is usually pretty clear. So unless it's absolutely clear, yes, I think they're going to ask you to pay your deductible. And then they would, if it turns out to be a not at fault, then they would give it back to you later on. Another question I had, and this is for the people with new CVORs or trying to get their CVOR. Who needs a CVOR? And basically that's any combination of vehicle that is over a gross weight of 4,500 kg, including the load. And this question came up where an insurance company was insisting that a new company get a CVOR because he had his vehicle registered at 4,400 kg and told the insurance company he was pulling a trailer. And the insurance company, of course, was smart enough to know, well, as soon as you put anything in that trailer, you're likely going to be over 4,500 kg, which means you need a CVOR. And this individual didn't understand that. And again, I put a video down below, a link to a video on YouTube down below that would help answer that question in case you have any similar questions. Okay, next and lastly, driver files. Really want to talk about driver files. I've got a couple of videos that I've made on driver files and common problems on driver files. And again, the link is down below. But one of the biggest things about driver files is getting the application form completed correctly. Okay, getting the application form completed correctly. For one of my new clients, they told me that they weren't able to take applications online yet. So I created an application form for them that is online, and because it's virtual or online, I can make certain fields required. And by making it required, even if it's a yes or a no answer, It makes it so much more complete when you make the driver fill it out correctly the first time. So for instance, what's required? Well, current address is required, of course. Driver's license number, birth date is required. You can skip these things easily on a paper application, not intentionally, but they can go over them mistakenly. Number of collisions that you've had in the last 3 years, I think the application is. Well, if you just leave it blank, of course you don't know if the driver had any collisions, but if you put a yes or no question in, have you had any collisions in the last 3 years? No, yes. If yes, enter details down below. Huh? Okay, so you can see how an online application form could be of much use. So if you and your company would like an online application form, please reach out. I'll see what I can do for you, see if I can set one up for you as well. I just finished this one on the weekend. I'm excited about it, and I haven't had feedback yet. Originally, I did it for them, and I didn't realize that they had wanted to print it out and have it look like an application form. And so that took me another few days to rearrange that to make it look good. And of course, now I think it looks pretty awesome. It's got their logo and everything on top. So I think that's cool. Anyways, that's that. The Dawg Speaks, of course, the Dawg Speaks is still out. That is 5-minute safety videos for truck drivers that they get to watch once a month, and you and the safety department get documentation that they've watched. Okay, so just go to the Dawg Speaks, D-A-W-G, of course, thedawgspeaks.com. Get more information there, and I'd be happy to set your company up on the Dawg Speaks so that you too can have documentation inexpensively every month that you are training your drivers. The insurance industry loves that, and we all know that insurance is in a hard market at the moment. So please, with that, I just want to say thank you. And that's it for this week. See you next Monday at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. That's it. The Dawg's out.